The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests of Colorful Voices of Sisterhood are their own and do not represent La'Moore Media Versatility, that of any broadcast networks utilized, its advertisers, or sponsors. All content is subject to copyright and may not be reproduced in any form without prior written consent by La'Moore Media Versatility. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests of Colorful Voices of Sisterhood are for general public information and entertainment purposes only.
Welcome back to Colorful Voices of Sisterhood. Today, we just got a lot going on. But before we go into that, first of all, we want to say thank you all for just viewing us. Don't forget to like, share, and follow us. We do have a YouTube channel, and we want you to share that channel with us. So we're excited to be back. Today, let's talk a little bit about what is going on in the community of our stars just separating. What's happening?
Definitely, there is something going on in our water. In the water.
You think it's in the water?
In our water, right?
Or
They're
the
talking
air,
like the whole ocean or
Yeah.
something.
or
but-
the air, or people just grow apart. It's seasonal. I mean, it's good to have people around
Mhm.
you, the people you love, you care. But sometimes it's just like you
Well,
grow apart, and mentally you grow physically, emotionally, spiritually.
Mhm. I think sometimes it's good also. It's good and bad to get separated because a lot of people comes out as best of friends.
Well, that's a true
Yes.
statement, depending on what kind of
Mhm.
relationship you
Mhm.
in. So we see Tiana Taylor, Jenna Myers, and Young Jeezy. All of these are like stars that people look up to. They're just kind of going their way. Sometimes I think you get caught up in the hype of stuff
Mhm.
because any relationship, anything to me, you got to fight for. You got to work for.
Yeah.
Now, I don't believe in standing no abusive anything,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes you get the hype of stuff going on.
Excitement. It's like sometimes people get excited the idea of what they like from each other, but not really you. So when you show, sometimes we afraid to show who we are. Then you get in a real relationship, you start seeing the person.
Right.
So we're not accepting for who they are. We are just liking them because of the idea of what they present. And I think sometimes that if, like you say, I don't believe in saying abusive relationship,
Right.
but also sometimes it's necessary and to take a time to get to know a person for who they are,
That's
And
true.
also,
accept them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
and it's all about what's going on behind the scene that we can see.
A
Wow,
lot
they're
of
pretty. Wow, handsome. Wow, they have a good life. Wow,
Yeah.
he's driving a real nice car. But what is really
Yeah.
going on
I
behind?
always
the
say
scenes?
I'm not going to be nobody arm piece.
Mhm.
Or what's the woman that they on the show? They just want them there for the presence
Yeah.
of the beauty of it.
The
Mhm.
idea.
And you're right, you don't know what's going on behind the scene.
Right.
Tina Turner had a song about what love got to do with it.
Yes. The movie.
It's a second hand
Oh,
emotion.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So even in relationship, you may be in love this season, but love not. But how do you fight through this right here? stuff?
Yeah.
So there's a lot that you got to fight through
Yeah.
if it's worth it. Now, some marriages you may have better on going on.
I mean, like you said, behind the scene, we fall in love with sometimes what we see out,
Yeah.
what we show. If it's physical, if it's credential, and when we focus on that, we miss the part that person he has real life before you.
That's true.
So the behind the door you're talking about is the trauma, the things that they experience in real life. Now you cannot handle. You like the idea, but you
Right.
cannot handle what comes with the person.
That's right. Well, a house ain't always a home.
Yes.
You
So
know?
we have to learn, and some things that if it's not healthy, I believe it's necessary to let it go. And with love, I believe in separation with love and care. To send, hey, I love you, I care for you. We might not grow together because you want your partner, whomever, friendship,
You also
someone
keep
that
your
you can
peace.
grow
Uh-huh.
with, someone you can grow with.
Mhm.
So I think
That's
it's
true.
necessary sometimes to grow apart.
So, and then it's the entertainment world.
Mm,
It's
Again,
definitely entertainment world,
it's-
which is filtering really out in the real world
Yeah.
Yes.
with stuff.
Yes.
So we gotta
Actually, we
look
just
at
had that talk last night, me and my
Your friend.
your heart.
my heart. And we talked about, because I say
It wasn't me and you either, Agnes. That was that right.
we talked about, because we see those actors, they have their person. What we see in TV, what they show is character, is scripted. So when you live in the real life, it's not scripted. It's real life you're dealing with every day.
That's right.
So how you face it is how you handle is other situations, something that we have to learn. And those actors in Hollywood, they're real people. They live they make mistake. I love Denzel Washington. I love Denzel Washington. I do. I love because his character, who he is, how he play. But do I know real life his? No,
Right.
I don't. I don't know what kind of husband he is. We just see what is reported. We don't know what kind of father he is. But I love, if I can create man for me, the character, it will be Denzel Washington.
All right.
Everything about him. But
He's
I
a
don't
good
know his,
actor.
yeah,
He's
I
a
don't
good
know
actor.
his real life.
He's
and
also,
who
I
he
think he's also a good family man.
yeah,
Still
I
married,
mean,
have
again,
kids. Yeah.
we see what the image people, even ourselves, how we present, but behind door we have a weakness and we have things that we need to work on every day.
That's
So
true.
that's what people, they're not accepting that. They see you doing, and one time you messed up, you all bad. No.
Unfiltered.
Yes.
You know, so much filtering going on. I mean, people can make you so beautiful even on Facebook with just a filter.
Yes.
So certain things has to be unfiltered. That's
Technology
good.
is really
Yeah.
guiding us
Yeah.
all.
The most
Yeah.
important is be you. Be you. Be organic. Be original. And if people like you, accept you, no
You know,
matter
the
what,
thing about a
you
lot
be
of people don't
honest.
know how to be themselves.
Mhm.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
You know, so that's it. They got to find, who are you?
Mhm.
I'm not going to be, I always identify as Tommy Barnes' wife, John Earl King, Annie King's daughter.
Mhm.
Who am I? So you know, you got to learn who you are so you can stand on you.
Mhm.
You know, that's good. But today we got a topic that we really all need to discuss. And this topic, we're talking about voting for local election, the big election and all, because a lot of times we don't know about voting. We just learn different parties based on what our parents told us, and we just become angry with each other. And now the nation is just angry.
Yes.
They just are angry nation and don't even know why they're angry. And I keep telling people, and I'm gonna keep saying, be rapture ready. But so today we have Marsha Wright, and Marsha is coming on, and we're excited to have her on because she has been involved in the voting process, just out teaching the community about voting. So Marsha, we're glad that you're with us here today so we can get into some good topics about voting.
I'm already
things.
enjoying the
Welcome.
Awesome. So welcome, Marsha. We're glad to have you today. So let's just kind of get started and let you, tell people some about you, and we'll go from there.
Well, I would start off by saying I'm here. I was asked to be here because I am a member of the Onslow County Board of Elections. This is my third term I just started on. We had a mandatory training in Charlotte a month and a half ago, and lots of changes, that are going on. But I enjoy this because voting is fundamental to a democracy. It cannot work without the participation of the people who live in it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're fortunate, I think, in this country that we started off that way. And it's a hard system to run. I mean, you got one person in charge all the time. A huge number of people may not be happy about that, but it's an easier system to run if only one or a handful of people control everything.
Mm-hmm.
In a democracy, we're fashioned so that everybody gets an opportunity to participate and to say what they say and say what they feel about what happened. It's going on, in the country. Now, for me, I probably am older than everybody else sitting here with. So I came up in a public school system that taught how the government works in elementary school. And we had to learn those things. We were tested on it. Wasn't anything I wanted to learn. It was just that you had to know it. And right now I'm seeing people talking about things, and it's clear they don't know how the government operates here. You need to know that in order to make good decisions when you do go to the polls and vote. and to also understand what's happening in any given year.
Mhm.
We had a brief discussion before we got started, and so there's some things I wanted to really put out there. I'm so thankful for being here now, because we are getting ready to start early voting. Most people who will be listening to this are aware of that, but there have been some changes that will take place this year, and I would like for everyone to be very clear on what is expected of them this time.
Okay.
Um,
So some of the changes that's made in early voting, what are some of the changes that we're looking for?
Well, I should start off by saying that once again, I am dating myself, but I will talk about the time when there was no such thing as early voting.
Yeah.
Right.
There was one day, the first Tuesday in November, you showed
And you
up
waited in line
and
forever.
waited in line. That was
Almost
in
passed
November.
out.
And we've evolved now to where we have absentee voting, we have early voting, and then of course we still have the first Tuesday in November. And I feel like I'm seeing us evolving toward more digital, not this paper and pen we're still using and have been using for a couple hundred years, in doing this. And I've got 2 children, one's 34 and one's 39. They're not going to be willing to do this. They're not putting up with this. And so I keep telling them, why don't you all find somebody who will work on a clean, transparent, reliable digital system. They'll win the Nobel Prize if they can come up with it and get that out there, because there are countries and there are even states in the United States that do totally all mail-in. They do some digital, they do hybrids of it. We haven't gotten that far, but I can feel it coming. I really can feel it coming. And if we want people to continue to participate, we're gonna have to do something about that. We really do. There are folks who won't join at the hip with their phones and have their entire lives on it. Mine at any given time, I don't know where the thing is. And so, it just shows you the difference in how we're evolving. And so we need to do something about this, But I'll just start by saying we do have elections coming up in October and November this fall. You said a minute ago that there's an election going on every year, and actually there is, but most people are only thinking about the federal election when president is going to be chosen and the governor. That's what they're worried about. But there's so much more to it. And I think back to people I know, the lady who hired me back in 1980 for my job, which was working with sickle cell clients. I retired from that in 2013. She used to always tell me all politics is local. You may be looking at the president, you may be looking at the governor. She said, but when you get ready to build a home, where do you go for that permit? You don't go to Raleigh. You don't go to Washington, D.C. You go over here to City Hall. When you're looking at some crime that's been committed, you're looking at local people to handle what's going on. And when you look at your school system and you've got kids in schools, or you work in the school system, that's a local issue. And
You
it
start in
varies.
your town, in
Absolutely,
your county.
absolutely. And the minute you cross that county line, there might be something different
Totally
going
different.
on right next door, right up the street, And so all politics is local, and that's why we want people to focus on and participate in these local elections that are coming up. in
I'm
October.
glad you said local. So they change to every Ansel County to come to one location to vote. Can you
Yes.
touch base on that?
I can, because, and I'm so glad you asked, because once again, this is perfect timing. Normally, those of your listeners who are listening right now will see this, are used to having various locations around the county that they can go to closer to home
Right.
and vote during the early voting. Now, I will say that early voting will begin on October 19th, and it will go on until November the 4th. Now, during the weekdays, they will be able to go on from 8 in the morning till 5 in the evening. There are 3 Saturdays involved in that. I believe the 21st and 28th of October and November the 4th, the last date, is also a Saturday. That's 8 to 3 on that day. But everyone will have to come to the Onslow County Board of Elections office. This is all over the county. That's a change from the recent past. I'm absolutely sure that's a change. That change occurred because, and I learned as I'm going along myself.
So has this been confirmed and voted
Yes.
out?
Yes, it
It's
has
already
been. Yes, we
confirmed.
had
Okay.
to, that decision had to be made. This is September. It had to be made 60 days before the election because all that information had to be compiled, sent off to the state, North Carolina
So
Board
I
of
have to drive
Elections.
all the way to that. So why
Yes.
did they change? Okay, here we go.
Well, you may have seen some articles that have been appearing in the news lately. It's a young man that's really been involved in this. I can't tell you what his name is off the top of my head, but he found out that Onslow, I think, is either at the bottom or very near the bottom of funding elections. Elections are odd in that we're considered the Onslow County Board of Elections, but it's not a county office in the true sense of it, like your water department or
Mhm.
your sheriff's department or anything like that. And so the counties, all counties, have to fund their election process.
Mhm.
And depending on how much they fund it, that's what we have to deal with, that amount of money that is available for us to use. Because we have to pay for sites to be open. We have to put people in those sites. You know, when you go in to vote and you walk in the door and there's several
yeah.
people sitting there waiting on you.
Reception, yeah.
Yes,
Mhm.
we have to, there's stipends involved in that,
Mhm.
ballots being printed, mail. There's just a laundry list of things we have to be able to pay for.
Mhm.
When you hold local elections like we're getting ready to hold, this is a big county, physically, geographically a large
Right.
county. And we have 5 townships, Richlands, Swansboro, Jacksonville,
Mhm.
the Holly Ridge area, and what they call Stump Sound, which is North Topsail Beach. Part of Surf City
Yeah,
is in
right.
Onslow County. Now, Sneads Ferry is a very
Yeah.
large growing
Mhm,
area,
yes.
but in all those that I've named, there is a mayor and a town or city council, whatever they might, or town council, whatever they might call
How
it.
about Sneads Ferry?
But in Sneads Ferry, they are not incorporated, which
Oh,
means that
really?
even though there's a community there and it has its own zip code and people live there, it's growing like
It is growing.
leaps and
Wow.
bounds. Oh my
Yes.
goodness.
It's a vacation
They are
area, too.
not yet a town or a city. Now, the
So-
people who live there have
Mhm.
made that decision, as I understand it, have
Yeah.
made that decision consciously because they're people who, some of you all might be involved in that, or are your listeners, or people who are watching. They move outside of Jacksonville because they want the services, but they don't want to have to pay taxes to live within the city of Jacksonville. I live right here in the city, so I pay city taxes and county taxes. People in Swansboro, Richlands.
I mean, on the
North
outskirts,
Topsail,
even though I
on the
got a
outskirts.
Richlands address, I don't pay
So,
double tax because I
if
don't
they
live
have-
inside
Yes.
of what we call the
City
city
in
limit.
the city
So
limits.
our mayor is for the town of Richlands, but I actually fall under the county.
Oh,
I'm not paying
Yes.
double tax.
Mhm.
so you're saying that since that Sneads Ferry has not been incorporated, so they
Yes.
don't have mayor, vice mayor, and all this council,
That's correct.
men and women?
Mhm. So for this particular election,
Mhm.
they are not involved directly because they don't have a mayor or a town council to vote for. So those people who live in Sneads Ferry would not be coming
Right.
to vote because they don't have a mayor to vote for and they don't have a town council. Now next year and last year, when we were voting for county commissioners, the people who govern the county of Onslow, that is when Sneads Ferry is able to be involved in the
Town
voting.
county.
So we do have a site we use down there when that occurs. But once again, and it can be very confusing too, because once again, we talked about knowing how the whole system operates is important because you may have people who are going to be driving in here from Sneads Ferry.
Yeah, I'm very excited
Expecting
about
to be
Sneads Ferry
able
because
to vote.
who's in charge of the peace and order and all that?
Board of
I mean,
Commissioners.
Absolutely. So it's the County Board of Commissioners
okay.
that governs all of the county
Mhm.
and the business that goes on within the county. But for these local municipal elections, if you're looking to vote for your mayor or town council,
Mhm.
Sneads Ferry doesn't have that right now.
Right.
But North Topsail Beach does, you have Richlands, Swansboro, Jacksonville.
Well, Mercy Parsons, you need to run for mayor.
Create something, write it in. Let's
Yes.
start. We have, but once they do though, taxes, money comes involved.
Yes, and that's the issue that has been with Sneads Ferry. You know,
Uh-huh.
they are growing
They
quite
are.
quickly.
Yes.
And I don't know if it'll happen in time in the near or maybe far future, but people who live there right now don't want to pay taxes to, I would just say, the city of Sneads Ferry if they ever get one. Sneads Ferry right now is a community, but it is not an incorporated city that has a town mayor or a town council.
The houses are expensive there.
Yeah.
Very expensive.
It is.
And lots of houses.
Square feet,
like
too.
400.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The changes I've seen over the time I've been here, especially in that area, are
Nice,
amazing.
beautiful houses there.
Mhm.
So my next question is helping to come one place to vote. If everybody have to travel, they already they say people they not voting, but it makes more, if I analyze, it
And-
would make more difficult for people to come from 45 minutes to 30 minutes.
And I tell you, your point is very well
Mhm.
taken. It
Mhm.
really, truly is. When we were preparing for this, because we start working months ahead of time as a board of elections group to get ready for these elections.
Uh-huh.
And so we have a director there who takes care of the day-to-day work, but we meet to make these decisions, and everything that we do about that has to be sent up and okayed by the North Carolina State Board of Elections. So when we started meeting about this issue, quite frankly, as a member, I was thinking we would have the same sites and it was going to be rolling out the same way, but once a minute ago, I told you about the funding issues. There's money involved in putting on an election,
Mhm.
whether it's a local one, a county one, state, federal, whatever it is. There's a cost involved in running an election.
In every single one.
And so when our director met with us, he informed us that he had contacted each of these municipalities that I mentioned over and over. And each one of them decided that they did not, for this election, want to fund the cost of putting it on. So we went to, as I said, Swansboro, Richland, and out. They decided that they didn't want to spend the money to run the election.
Which doesn't mean that the
have a
next
site.
time around when they have the presidential one, that they may go back to that, right? This is not a permanent change, is it?
I certainly hope not. I would, you never know what the
Yeah.
future holds, because I was quite surprised about this, quite honestly. Because if you live in North Topsail Beach and you have a mayor and a city council, and they do, in order to vote for those people in this year, 2023, you're going to have to come up here to Jacksonville to the Board of Elections, or you're going to have to use an absentee ballot. A number of people will probably be using that avenue, and I can speak to that, shortly. But you're right. If you live in Richlands, if you live in Swansboro,
You have to travel.
you're going to have to come up here to the Board of Elections. Now, we're prepared to deal with that, but I'm sure that's why I'm so glad you're asking me, because I wanted people to understand that this is not a decision we made in a vacuum. This was not our decision. I was anticipating we would have what we always have. And after he explained it to us, there was no way we could fund it, based on the budget we currently have. And voter turnout, it also speaks to the voter turnout issue. You mentioned it a moment ago. When you don't have significant voter turnout, and your people who are running your local government, your city or your town, they have to make decisions about how they spend money. If you've got 10% of the people who live there are the only ones who come out to vote, they're feeling like, it's not a good expenditure of money to open up a place locally there
That's true.
and hold it. So that's probably what's driving a lot of what they're, trying to do, because you figure that by the time this election comes up in November, we're almost halfway through the fiscal year. So whatever you had to spend on everything you've got to do in that community from July 1st of 23 to June 30th of 24, you may not feel like that's money you want to spend, especially when you do have ways of participating.
Right.
So if a person who lives in North Topsail Beach and wants to participate and can't get here, they can vote by absentee balloting. They can do that, but if they just don't have a site locally there. But now the other side of that is if the voters want something to happen, then they need to initiate that call to their elected officials and say, look, we want something locally here.
Yeah.
We don't want to have to drive up. I don't think they were aware of it. I certainly was not as a member of the Board of Elections that this would happen this year, but it has. So we are prepared, as I say, to deal with it. We will have all the ballots that are needed and so forth and so on. You know, we have all the infrastructure ready, but it's going to be a change. And particularly in Onslow County, I mean, in Jacksonville, I do want people to know that you will not, lots of people like to go to the Commons to vote early. It's convenient, lots of parking, you can get in and out very easily. Everybody knows where it is. So lots of votes come through that area, site for early voting. And that will not be an option this time.
Sure.
So I want everybody who's listening, and please tell everybody please call down to the Board of Elections if you have any questions. They're very much prepared to answer you. But what I don't want to have are people who are just rolling up to the place they're used to going to, and coming in there and there's nothing going on,
Right.
and they can't do it.
Yeah.
And the one thing I worry about is when people get frustrated like that,
That
they
don't
tend
vote.
to
They don't
get
vote.
in the car and leave, and they
no
don't
more
vote.
than
And we don't need that. So we
Right.
really want people to
Because we're already down with voting
Absolutely.
anyway, so we
Yes.
don't need for people not
So-
to vote. We need them to vote.
I'm just saying to everybody out there who's eligible to vote, please participate. It's an important thing to do. It truly, truly is. And if you have any issues or questions, don't hesitate to call the Board of Elections about where I should go. Because if you're hearing this and you're talking to somebody else that you know, you talk about trusted voices. You all are obviously are trusted voices for people in general, and women probably in particular, who are listening to you all. I understand you meet every Wednesday and you cover different topics.
Yes.
So as you do this, you're going to be growing and taking on a wider audience. I'm sure you will. And people consider you to be a trusted voice.
Right.
You want to be able to give them accurate information. And so I'm so glad that you.
Yeah.
So you
That's-
mentioned earlier about digital. Can they also vote?
No, we're not set up to do that yet. We are still on the coming in and getting the ballot when you come in, and voting that way. Now, absentee ballot, I mentioned a moment ago, you can secure an absentee ballot the first day. You have to request that from the Board of Elections. And that will begin October the 6th. That was a very powerful tool in the last couple of elections, and many people took that route because, COVID was still talked about. People they just, you get food and groceries delivered to the house now. Some folks just want to do everything from the house.
Convenient.
Absolutely. And students, can vote. If you turn 18 on or before election day, you can register and participate in this. So
That's one thing I like about early voting, because you can register and vote at the same time.
you can. And see, that's such an advantage.
Yes.
If you're a person who is watching this and you have never registered, you have never done this before, and believe me, you have many people who are. You just have never done this, but you want to get involved. If you go to the site for early voting, you can register and vote at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's a real huge advantage. And it's
Yes.
a good amount of time from October the 19th clear to November the 4th.
Right.
8 to 5 every day,
Mhm.
8 to 3 on Saturday.
Yeah.
You've got time. You're coming in here more than likely for whatever else you do, grocery shopping or whatever.
Yeah.
Come on in and get registered.
No excuses.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
while you say that, let me talk about the people that was a felon, because there's a misconception out there. If there was a felon, can they vote?
You hear me sighing. And the reason I am doing that is because which is a reason why people need to vote. At the time these issues came up, that issue about felons, if you commit a felony and you're incarcerated, you lose your citizenship, your rights to participate in the system. And that's getting more and more, between drugs and everything else. It's just getting to be a much,
Mhm.
and so, but when at least in North Carolina, when people come out of incarceration, they can regain their right to vote.
Oh,
Now, back in 2020, and during that period of time, we had certain people who were on the North Carolina Supreme Court. And these cases were making their way through. You heard about them, voter ID and felons voting and so on. Under the old system, a person who had committed a felony, it wasn't enough just to come out of incarceration. You also had to pay whatever fines were still owed, whatever restitution was still owed, whatever the system required, parole, whatever. You had to do all of that and complete all that before you could then vote.
Before you're given
Before you-
another opportunity again.
To vote, yes. And at the same time, there was something called the Real ID. You may or may not have talked about that. This has been a few years ago. Well, the last election, last major election. And people were going to have to show an ID, something that we have not ever had before. And so there was some confusion about how do I get one? How do I secure one? Particularly for women, because with the Real ID, I don't know if anybody of you had ever attempted to get one where they were talking about
Right.
you do. Women change their names through marriage, divorce, whatever it is. A man generally has the same name he was born with through the span of his life. You had your ID stuff that you brought in, had to match up all with it. It was something else. I saw a woman who had a stack of documents that high. She was the same person in all of them, but they wouldn't give her the Real ID because the name on her birth certificate didn't match the name on her driver's license, didn't match the name on the. I'm telling you,
Marriage
it was
certificate.
Passport and everything.
something that is actually
else.
is good. Something that we have to talk about on our topic about women changing their last name. Just as-
Yes,
Mhm.
and documentation and so on.
Because I had to bring my marriage certificate in. I had to bring like 4 things in so it to match
So it
Yeah.
would all match up.
before. And I think I went like 3 times before I actually got a real ID.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so it was a real issue, like I said, particularly for women. And but that was going through the courts. And when it finally got to the Supreme Court, because of the makeup of the Supreme Court at that time, that was declared, no, we're not doing all of that. No, that's off the table. And so there was no ID required. Felons who were on the other side of that door, once you finished your time with incarceration and you stepped on the other side of that door and you were a you were freed from the prison, you could then immediately register to vote while you were still paying your fines and while you were still doing your restitution and so forth and so on. You could regain your right to vote. And then what we didn't, I shouldn't say it that way. What the people who were on the Supreme Court at that time who made that decision to be inclusive and to make this happen were not elected again in the last election. They lost their seats.
Because they didn't agree to
Different
The
things.
people just didn't come out. There were people who didn't agree with that and they voiced their opinion. And those of us who did were happy with those decisions, didn't come out to support those folks. They lost their seats. So as soon as that happened, new people were elected to those judgeships.
New rules again.
There you go.
And all this is back on the table. So I'm sorry to tell you that I don't want to give you bad information. This is still, I think, being talked about. We're proceeding on at the moment under the old rules. I don't think that they have come out with a new hard and fast decision. Now, voter ID is back on the table. That's
That's always
it was gone. No, it had. We had that Supreme Court that was in place back in 2020 had decided we're not going to do this. We don't need to do this. There are enough checks and balances already in the system that if you go in and you say you are who you say you are, then we have the paperwork and everything that shows this, and you go on and you vote. Now this is back on the table. However,
I'm
It is-
thinking. I'm just.
I know.
I'm thinking.
I know.
There's
I
a lot
mean,
of changes.
It's
Yes.
not only a lot of changes. I mean, we believe second chances. I heard you saying multiple times, Diana, even more than second chances. We cannot say that. So I'm listening to you and how some people. I also understand the concept. If I analyze, they don't, because they passed that, they lost. They did not reselect it, the judges that vote for that, because again, sometimes system failing people, not the people, just the system, how they play around.
well, remember that systems do exactly what they're designed to do.
But it's corruption there.
It's the implementation of the system that is
Yes,
where
the
the people
corruption.
come in.
Yeah, it's
and
this
do
corruption because again, if those that they were have felony and all that, because they out now, they can speak their voice, the experience they have in jail. They don't want that. You see, they don't. They want them to be, because they make mistake, they have to deal with them the rest of their life. Because the people behind the bar, even though their choices made them to be there, but also they have experience. They experience inside the prison.
And we had so many people out here who may have done something when they were 18, 19, 20 years old.
Yeah.
And they would themselves would say, if I had all to do over again, I'd never do. And they're paying for that forever because that's on the record. They're not, not being able to participate in the government that decides
Yeah.
about what happens.
Just
to
like
them.
what we're talking last topic about, can these people still find a job,
Right.
Yes.
decent job?
Yes. So there's lots of issues there, but we're proceeding right now, as far as I know, on the idea that if a person wants to get registered to vote, go down to the Board of Elections, present some identification at that time, and because everybody has to present ID when they get registered. So and we will get them registered again, and we'll see what happens before this early voting starts, because the decisions have to be made at that point. Because when people come in to early vote, then you've got to know what to do.
Right.
And so if you're a registered voter, and some people have asked me, well, what about the felons who registered when they could? And if you're a registered voter, you're a registered voter. I mean, you can't retract, what has happened at that time. We're just talking about the people who are currently impacted and are coming out next week or the week after, and what can they do? So
because of these changes, what are we going to do as citizens here to tell these people, this township that you are talking about, how are we
Yes.
gonna
so
market that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So the changes have been posted on the North Carolina State Board of Elections site. We have all the same information on the local one here. We're doing educational programs like this to try to answer the basic questions. And as I said, my concern was really about making sure that anyone who's watching this program, to please let people know that there is only one site for this election that's happening next month. And that's the Board of Elections.
Down in Georgetown.
Don't worry about 2024, because I'm sure that there will be something
else
going on,
Yeah.
something different there. But here, and once again, keep in mind that this is early voting,
Right.
because for early voting, we have those 4 or 5 sites. When you actually, if you wait until you want to show up because some people do that, they just don't trust anything else. They want to stand there in that line, and on November the day they want to cast.
It's
that
the
vote.
one that's driven to
Yeah.
want to see.
They want to actually, they're driven to do that.
Yeah,
They
to
want to
do
be
it.
there that day
Yeah.
to see it. There's a different kind of process, because then it comes back down to where your precinct is. Once again, as I'm talking about this, I know people are saying, what is she talking about? Because this is just too much for me to try to process. So I'm just telling people, bite off a piece at a time, as that old saying about you can't eat an elephant all at one time, just bite off pieces of it. And so the piece I want you to bite off right now is to get yourself registered. If you have ever voted and you think you still are registered and you might not be sure, you can visit NC, S as in Sam, B as in boy, .gov, G-O-V. That's the North Carolina State Board of Elections site. They have a button there. I think it's called voter search, where you can go right on there. They'll ask you, I think it's 3 or 4 questions, what your name is, what county you're in, and they may ask for date of birth just to make sure they're cross-referenced.
Right.
And it'll pop right up and tell you whether your registration is current, what precinct you vote in. So there's loads of information floating around. It's just trying to access it to get it when you need it. So the main thing right now is get registered, check your registration if you're concerned about it. We only have one location for early voting.
And with the photo ID,
Yes.
you don't wait. Just go down there and find out what you need to do.
Well,
But
for the voter
there
ID,
is something that I heard something about the photo ID.
Yes.
You have to
for a photo ID. In the past, when it first came up, we talked about how crazy that was before. Let that go. Because now any government ID, government issued ID you have is valid and you can use it. If you've got a driver's license and if you drove into the site, then I presume you do have a license.
It has to be you, right? Not digital.
But you've got, North Carolina driver's license. If you've got a passport card, you can use that. A state ID. Some people don't drive.
Right.
But there are any number of things you need a photo ID for during the course of your lifetime if you live any length of term. And so you can actually go to the Department of Motor Vehicles and free of charge, they will issue you a state ID.
Which
you
is
can't
good.
drive with that, but you can use it for identification purposes. And it's always good because you just never know what you'll run into.
Especially
or
if you're
the
going to
situation
banking.
you run into.
Yeah.
Or traveling somewhere.
Right.
You need to be able to tell people who you are.
But I also heard that if you're 65 years and older, if your ID have expired, we still can use that. Is that correct?
As long as that ID was valid on your 65th birthday.
Okay.
So, for example, if you know a friend who's turning 65 tomorrow, next week, and their license is expired, or whatever voter ID they have is expired, they got to go do something. But if they're 65 and that ID was valid on their 65th birthday, it can be used forevermore.
That's awesome.
And that keeps, older populations from having to run around town trying to figure out what in the world is going on here. There are many women here who are widows of military. They have that military ID. They shop with it on TT or wherever they're going. They go on base to get treatment or whatever. That is a valid ID because it's government issued. And even kids who are in school. There was a window of opportunity for schools to send in the ID that they issue to their students, the university system, to see if that would be okay. And I know that at least 99 universities and schools sent that ID in. I don't think Coastal was one of them. I was a little surprised, but I don't think that they are. But once again, you can find out by looking to see what list they have. So basically, if it says a military, a veteran ID card, a tribal enrollment card, or issued by a state or federally recognized tribe. So there are lots of IDs now. And that I think the pushback against voter ID when the issue first came out was not so much, I don't want to identify myself. It was seen by a number of populations as a way to separate us, to disenfranchise populations from each other, and asking you to present an ID, was just part of that whole thing. Now, everybody has to have some kind of identification, present it, and go on ahead. If for whatever reason you do not have one and you do show up to vote that day, there is a form that you can fill out that tells why you did not have one.
Yeah.
Even there are people who are not going to hear this broadcast, who may not be involved here, who might be sitting at home and haven't listened to any of this, and think about, I didn't realize I had to vote I live in Jacksonville. I want to vote for the mayor and I want to vote for a person in my ward. And they go on ahead. We're prepared to deal with any circumstance that occurs, but we just want people to be prepared. Now, 2024, my understanding is they're giving you a window of time here to get yourself ready, because in 2024, in the federal election that will occur in November of 24,
Mhm.
your people will have to be able to identify themselves and to bring a suitable ID.
So we're getting it prepared
So we're
now.
getting people prepared.
And we also want people to understand is the importance of voting in the local election.
elections. Yes,
Mhm.
it's
A lot of people don't
extremely
worry about
important.
that. They worry about just the federal. They need to
Yes.
vote in this local election.
I'll throw out an example of what I use to tell people, just the average person. If you get arrested for something
Mhm.
and you may hire an attorney, you may not be able to afford one or whatever, but if some crime has occurred, whatever it is, and you get arrested, I ask people who makes the decision whether or not your case goes to court. Because you know that you could be sent home.
Right.
It could be dismissed for lack of evidence or whatever. You watch these shows on TV. But who is the person who makes that decision?
That's the judge.
No.
The lawyer.
The mayor? The mayor?
No.
Well, then it was going to be the people that sit around that I
The
get
sister-
called to the court. Who is
sis-
what did you
and
call
that-
it when they
this is-
call me for jury duty?
And this is the example I use to show people how important it is to your own personal life in that chair you're sitting in, or could be if it isn't now, could be, or someone you care about.
Mhm.
The person who decides that is the district attorney's office,
Yeah.
the DA.
The DA.
So, but wait, the DA is not a hired position.
Okay.
You don't put an application in and go do an interview with somebody so that you can be hired as a DA. The DA is an elected position. They're on the ballot.
They cannot just say yes or no, let that go.
No.
Yes.
They make.
Excuse me.
Without even reading it, without even.
No. There's a process for going through all that, and you look at the evidence that you presented and so on. But there is a decision made. My husband was an attorney for 43 years before he passed away. There's a process to make that decision, and if the DA's office decides there is not sufficient evidence, or there's some other issue, and they decide that your case is dismissed, it's gone, then you're going back home.
Yeah.
Now, as a person who you did something to, I
Victim.
might be furious about that. But I saw a situation on TV that just blew my mind the other day about that. But it happened that way. But that decision is made by the district attorney's office. And the DA is an elected position. It is not a hired position. The commissioners don't hire that person. That is an elected office. The sheriff's department
The
Yes.
sheriff's office, but we
It's
can
elected.
is an elected office. And
elected.
every 4 years you get
Yeah,
thrown out there.
But
Because
okay,
you know
so
why?
So
But
the
see, a
point-
lot of times we don't. This is good information
So the
because
point
we
I'm
don't
trying to
know
make
that.
is when we talk
they
about
get
local
elected.
politics, sometimes people don't understand what you mean.
What about my right to be heard? What about
my question?
what about my right to be heard? I mean,
My
they
question-
just
My question is, there are people that they don't care for that. They don't want to vote.
You
They don't
got-
want to vote.
Yeah,
So I'm
exactly.
just saying that there are people that they don't care for that. Say
Exactly.
if they don't like the DA, if they don't like sheriff, like they don't go vote.
They go, oh well,
Then guess
because
what?
because a lot of people don't even know that they have an
Can we?
opportunity.
Here's the
to use
question
that
of
person.
the day: can we sue the DA? We can. We are
This
citizens.
is two happy people.
Depends on the situation.
Because you
know,
have to
because
prove.
that's it.
You have to
once
prove. You
again-
cannot just sue people. You have to have evidence why you
Because,
sue
because
the
once
people.
again,
I work with that in Africa. This is not Philippine. I don't
Our
write in the
judicial-
paper. Are you
judicial
just
system-
paper?
that's
disappear.
why.
Yeah.
Once again, because and this is why I'm saying, that in addition to everything we've been talking about for a while, we need to.
Good. Yeah, a few seconds out.
We need to. We just need to be involved in it.
Yes.
We need to learn how our system works. Because the point you bring up, that because you see these programs on TV every day, you think that you can go into a courtroom and sue the person because you were found guilty of a crime and you didn't think it went the way. No, that our judicial system is part of the three. We have a legislative system where people in Congress make the decision. You have the executive, where the mayor and the president of the U.S. governor. You have a judicial system. and the judicial system is set up with rules and regs that
See, people always want to blame that's why I say you try to blame everything on the president. You don't even know what roles.
Yeah. Oh,
You got to know what the Senate House is, the House of Representatives. You got to get involved in voting. And you have to research this stuff out for yourself. But we're getting close to being out of time.
Okay.
We actually need a whole nother session to continue on with this. But again, there is only one site voting, and that is at the border election this year. This year. Marsha, we thank you so much for coming on the show today. This is just amazing. I think all of our interest has been piqued.
And I can't tell you how much I appreciate having this time, because it's just, I rarely get a chance to discuss it in this way.
Yeah.
Instead of just throwing out facts, throwing out, answers.
We're going to definitely be calling you for some community events.
Yeah. And there are some coming up. So I'll send you something about some of the events that are coming up that you can share.
Bring it to Richlands too, because you know me, I'm all in Richlands.
Let your voice be heard.
Yes.
Be part of the community. Do your part. Thank you for being with us today. Please don't forget, follow, like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you next week. Take care.
That's amazing because a lot of
Hello, colorful voices of Sisterhood fans. We got some exciting news today. We are proud to announce our new partnership with Vegas Plus, Colorful Voices of Sisterhood, to be aired on all of the platforms of Vegas Plus, primarily on the Vegas Live TV and Phil-Am TV network. What this means is Colorful Voices of Sisterhood will be aired 7 times weekly on the linear channels, including but not limited to Roku, Amazon Fire TV, KGNG 26.8 Las Vegas, WCETV, Vegas Live TV.us, and now, more importantly, on the Vegas Plus Live channel platform in Ampo Theater. Cheers to us.
Yes.
Cheers.
Yes.
Many more to
Many
come.
more. Yes.
New network, new friendship.
Thanks to them, we did it.
At La'Moore Media Versatility, we aim to provide comprehensive solutions to our clients. We have a team of experienced professionals who can help you with every aspect of your media needs. From documentation and marketing to promotion and more, we provide our clients with top-notch quality services. We understand that each client is unique and has specific needs. That's why our team works closely with you to understand your company and event goals and objectives. We are committed to providing the highest quality services in media and strive to exceed our clients' expectations. Our team is passionate about helping you reach your goals and making sure you get the best experience and results. If you're looking for a reliable business to help you with all your media needs, look no further than La'Moore Media Versatility. Contact us today to get started at 252-497-3817 or at www.lamore-photos.com.